Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're just going to give it maybe 30 seconds or so. There's still some people joining in into the webinar, so we'll give it 30 seconds or so to get things started. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. Well, hello, Ani, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How E-Bikes Work. My name is Benjamin John, and I'm the Climate and Energy Programs Manager for the Georgian Bay Minnedogamie Biosphere, as well as your facilitator for today's session. Also joining me from the Biosphere is Emma Burton, our Climate and Youth Outreach Coordinator, who will be leading all of the tech in the background. So if you are having any issues with Zoom, Emma will be able to help you. Please know that we will also be recording today's session and posting it to our YouTube channel. We really want to make this session accessible to those that weren't able to make it today, but also to offer yourselves the opportunity to review any of the topics that we discuss. This link will be circulated in a follow-up after the webinar, and it's also going to be made available on our website. We also would like to encourage you to use the Q&A tool that Zoom offers. If you have a question at any time throughout the webinar, please put it in there, and we'll leave some time at the end of today's session to get to your questions. But before we begin, though, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the land on which we're on today. The Georgian Bay Biosphere is situated within Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1920, and it's located on Anishinaabeg territory. Our organization under UNESCO acknowledges the rights of Indigenous peoples in this territory and works towards respectful and reciprocal relationships as we're all caretakers of the land. So thank you everyone again for joining us this evening. If this is your first time hearing about the Georgian Bay Minnedogamie Biosphere, it is one of 19 UNESCO World Biospheres in Canada. Our biosphere in particular stretches 200 kilometers along the eastern coast of Georgian Bay and was designated by UNESCO in 2004. And regionally, we are ecologically unique as this area contains the world's largest freshwater archipelago. As an organization, we are a registered charity with an office located in Parry Sound, and we rely on grants, partnerships, and donations to carry out the work that we do in the fields that you see on the screen here in the areas of environmental conservation, climate action, sustainable communities, culture, and education. And within these program areas, it's our goal to help inform and educate and facilitate ways to inspire collaborative partnerships for learning and action that work towards building a balance between humans and nature within our biosphere region. Today's webinar is part of a larger webinar series, as well as a project focused on both electric vehicles and e-bikes. And we're really appreciative of the Mike Brigham Foundation, Lakeland Solutions, the North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit, as well as some of our other partners who have made this possible. If you enjoy today's webinar, please be on the lookout for more events and webinars as well. On March 6th, for example, we will be hosting Ontario by Bikes for a webinar on cycling tourism in the biosphere and beyond. On April 13th, we'll be hosting a textiles repair cafe in Parry Sound where you can bring damaged clothes or other textiles, and groups of volunteers can help you to either repair them or teach you how to fix them in the future. Really, the purpose of this type of event is to reduce the amount of textiles that end up in our local landfills. Then on June 6th, we'll also be having a regional climate action forum. And at this event, we'll be inviting a number of local contractors, experts, as well as industry to support in learning and connecting with them about anything related to, say, building retrofits, sustainable transportation, and other waste management practices. So whether you're an expert at some of these things, you have some knowledge already, or really just beginning to learn about them, there's a little bit of something for everyone at these events that are going to be held. But to start things off with our focus on e-bikes tonight, I'd like to start by taking a quick poll of the audience to see who here has actually rode an e-bike before. And you should see there a question on the screen. And please feel free to put your response in there. All these responses are totally anonymous. So myself, as well as the other panelists and audience members, won't know who's responded with what. I'll give everyone maybe 10 more seconds to put their answer in. Okay. So I have on the poll results here that about 30% have. I'm not sure if you're able to see the poll results, but about 30% have rode an e-bike before, and 70% have not rode an e-bike before. So um, it sounds like yes, there would be quite a bit of new information for everyone here. And as a follow-up question, just one more question here that we should see in a second. Is there something preventing you from getting an e-bike, and understanding that there's a lot of things and barriers that prevent people from getting e-bikes, but interested to know if there's anything preventing for you from getting one. Again, every response you put in here is totally anonymous, so we won't know who is saying what. Give everyone maybe 15 or 20 more seconds as these results come in. Okay. So I think you should be able to see the results up here, but yeah, as we can see, there's the common themes are around the costs of these types of bikes, but also a lot of people looking for more information first. So really excited then to introduce today our guest speaker, Thomas Clark, who will be providing us with a lot of information about these types of e-bikes. So Thomas is the co-owner of Parry Sound Bikes, along with his wife Alicia. Parry Sound Bikes is a full-service bicycle and Nordic ski shop that's located in Parry Sound, Ontario. They offer clothing and other essentials to make the most out of your experiences, whether it's offering sales, service, and rentals for bikes, e-bikes, and Nordic skis. Prior to joining Parry Sound Bikes in 2017, Thomas actually worked for Cervelo at their head office in Toronto as a product manager. Thomas has had many e-bikes over the years and currently rides a specialized Vado e-bike, which replaces his EV for grocery runs and errands around town. So we're really excited to have Thomas as an expert on these types of vehicles and to share, Thomas, your knowledge with us. And yeah, I'll pass things over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me again. Here, I'll just see if I can get the PowerPoint up. There we go. Everyone can see this fine?
We can't see it yet, Thomas.
Oh, okay. Um, we're good now?
We can see it now. Yep, we see
Okay,
there we go.
great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, well, thanks for the introduction there, Ben. As you mentioned, along with my wife Alicia, own Parry Sound Bikes. And yeah, I just find e-bikes, I think, are a great climate tool, and they're just great for a lot of other things as well. So in part one, I covered kind of the e-bike basics, different types of e-bikes, because there's a lot out there, from mountain bikes, like kind of cargo bikes, road bikes, lots of different bikes for different uses. Why e-bikes and what e-bikes need. And the hint there, not electricity. The big thing that e-bikes really need is infrastructure. So that's one thing. If you're talking to any counselors or mayors or anyone, make sure you bother them about that. So tonight we're going to cover measuring power and the different types of power, range and battery life, drivetrain choices, and kind of how to most easily make your e-bike last. I hope after tonight you can easily like look at, and even at the end of this session, I have a bunch of screenshots from some different websites and stuff, so we can kind of see, so you can better understand like how much power that e-bike has, like how much um, torque it has, and these kind of things, these numbers that separate it from a normal bicycle. Because I think for a lot of us, I know for me that was always the big part. I really didn't understand what those numbers meant, or what they were signifying. I made my presentation last time probably a little too long, so I kind of rushed through the common myths about e-bikes, and so I just kind of wanted to quickly go over these. The first thing is e-bikes are cheating. I hear this all the time. They're not. I don't know why. This stigma just needs to really like end. So they're not cheating. All the kind of studies really show that most people with an e-bike actually ride more. They ride longer. They're still getting some like really great health benefits out of it. So in no way is it cheating. E-bikes really aren't dangerous. I think some of this comes from e-bikes just kind of get put in a broad category. So here in Canada, and they need to be governed at 32K an hour, whereas some countries they can maybe go to 40, 50, like they're more like a motorcycle. So I feel like that's where that comes from, but that's really not the case here at all. E-bikes can certainly get wet. That's not an issue. Any reputable e-bike out there, all the plugs, everything's going to be set up to easily withstand like, light pressure washing, rain, puddles, all that kind of thing. E-bike batteries pose a fire hazard. You can really go into this. I mean, any battery to some degree poses a fire hazard, just like, any gas stove or gas car, like those all to some extent pose a fire hazard. Again, as long as you have a reputable e-bike, this really shouldn't be an issue. The only case to really look out for is if you have a major crash, or if the battery's been like cracked or damaged or something. That's going to be a case where then you might actually have a potential like fire hazard there. But just don't bring them inside at that point. Make sure you keep the battery outside. E-bikes don't really require any more maintenance than a regular bike. Just kind of the regular tune-ups you do on a regular bike is all you need there. And then e-bikes are useless if they run out of battery, and they definitely aren't, because they're still a bike, so you can still pedal them. So that kind of covers just quickly some of those myths about e-bikes that I ran through really quickly at the end of the last presentation. So the three kind of major terms for tonight is watts. And this is kind of simply put is the amount of horsepower that an e-bike makes. You're going to see this. This is how they're going to refer to all of the motors and like how much power they make. Then Newton meter, this is the amount of torque that your e-bike makes, the amount of rotational force. So this is another number that you will probably see with any e-bike when you're shopping and looking for an e-bike. And then the last thing is the watt hour. And this is the amount of energy that your e-bike has stored in its battery and how big the battery is. So these are kind of the three terms that you're probably going to see with any e-bike that you look at. And it's really what differentiates an e-bike from a regular bike. So they're good terms to kind of familiarize yourself with. So I thought this was handy, this comparison. So this is when I go through the terms I'm going to go through with a gas car and with a electric car as well. And I specifically chose the Hyundai Kona because it basically has the equivalent gas and electric vehicle, where a lot of electric cars don't have like a one-to-one kind of comparison like this. And then I picked the Kona Do here just because this way we have three Konas on the screen. And the Kona Do has a Shimano Steps motor. So it's a very, very common motor system. So all the numbers that you see from it will be kind of very similar to what you'll probably see out there. So in simplest terms, a watt is just a unit of power and a measure of how much power can be produced or consumed. You'll recognize all these terms from just like high school physics class. So I'm not going to get into them too much, but it's more to kind of get an understanding here of kind of what it means and what you can compare it to. So the Kona Do is rated at 250 watts or 0.33 horsepower or 0.25 kilowatt. So if we start comparing that, the Hyundai gas version of the car has 147 horsepower, which is 108 kilowatts. And then the Kona Electric has 150 kilowatts, or the equivalent of 204 horsepower. So the electric one's a little bit more powerful in the horsepower department um, than the Kona, than the gas one, I mean. And then the e-bike is like just not even anywhere close to these when it comes to power. That's like what, over 400 times like less when it comes to like watts. So when we're talking about watts, this is the one really important distinction, and it's a distinction that you don't always see, and the e-bike companies won't always tell you. So the difference is the nominal power versus peak power. So nominal power is the power a motor can produce without harming itself. In other words, the power it can produce indefinitely. This is what most manufacturers are going to be referring to. This is kind of the important number when it comes to a motor, because this is how you can have the motor running for hours at this power, and it's not going to have any issues. Peak or max power is the power motor can most power that a motor can produce, but only for a limited time before it overheats. So when you look back at the other screen there, the Kona Do had a 250 watt power, which was their nominal power. So that motor in actuality can probably produce like 600 watts, but it's not going to be able to produce that for very long without overheating. So that number doesn't, it's not that important. It's really the nominal power that's the important number to see. In Ontario, e-bikes can't exceed 500 nominal watts. So that's something to look at. And something, if they ever start cracking down on this, like they are in other countries, it's something that could become important. In a lot of European countries, how much power your e-bike makes, how fast your e-bike can go, are very important things. And that the laws, like police and stuff, are starting to crack down, and they're starting to have big fines for. Not really seeing that here yet, but you never know, could be coming. So to try to give you an idea of what watts means when it comes to riding, this was a road ride I did at the end of August. So this was on my road bike out with a few other people. I have a power meter on my road bike, so it tells me how much power I'm producing. I don't have a motor on it at all. So for this ride, we were out riding for an hour and a half, had a 31 kilometer an hour average during that time. And my average power was 148 watts. So when it comes to an e-bike, because most of them don't have a throttle, then the power you're putting in, the e-bike is matching that power, either going less than that power or more than that power, depending on what setting you have. But you can see I could do 31 kilometers an hour in average, which is really close to the 32K, which e-bikes are governed at. And I was only using 148 watts. So like that Kona, when it's nominal power, the power it can kind of do for as long as until the battery runs out. This is way below that, 150 watts. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. If you're like a cyclist already, you're probably going to be very familiar with watts, because they'll refer to that in racing and stuff like that. Like that's kind of the number that they refer to for the amount of power a cyclist puts out. So now the next one that's an important one to know is Newton meter. So in simple terms, a Newton meter is a measure of torque, or the amount of force it requires to move something. So this is rotational force. And a good way to kind of differentiate between torque and watts is that torque is kind of what gets you going, and horsepower is kind of what keeps you moving at that speed. So torque is kind of what's going to get you up to 25K an hour. And then once you're there, it's going to be kind of the watts that's going to sort of keep you going. So before, when we saw a major difference where the e-bike didn't produce anywhere close to what the gas car or the electric car did, now the e-bike is actually getting like almost similar. It's pretty amazing when you actually look at this. So the Kona Do here, this has 60 Newton meters of torque. The Hyundai, of course, because everything's imperial, so they refer to it as pound feet, but that's the equivalent to 179 Newton meters. So now we're only talking 3 times less. Whereas before, when we were talking about watts or horsepower, we were talking about like 400 times less. So now the e-bike actually has some decent torque here. And then when we come over to the electric vehicle, you'll see the electric vehicle has 395 Newton meters of torque. And so this is why those all the electric vehicles feel so sporty and accelerate so well, is because this is what electric engines or electric motors do really well. They make torque really well and really easily. Um, yeah, so in case you hadn't kind of run across that before, I always find this very interesting, and just so interesting how much actual torque there is in an e-bike. And then the last number to really remember here is what is a watt hour? So in simple terms, a watt hour is a measure of a unit of energy, or the amount of energy over time. So it's really just representing how much power is in the battery. So the Kona Do here, it's a 504 watt hour battery. The only comparison to a gas car is the size of the gas tank. So we have a 47-liter gas tank, and then a Hyundai Kona, the electric, has a 65 kilowatt hour battery. So just massively larger, because this is only half 504 watt hours. That's half a kilowatt, half 1 kilowatt hour. So you can see next here also like the range for each of these. So the bike, they're claiming about a 200K range, which as long as you're in like the lowest assist setting, that could very well be realistic. It'd be on the optimistic side, but that could definitely be attainable. And if you're filling that up overnight at the night rate we have here in town, which is like 8 cents, I think, a kilowatt. So you'd be looking at like 4 cents for filling that battery. And then we have with the gas car, more like a 600-kilometer range, but that's probably going to be a $70 cost at current gas rates. And then a 390-kilometer range on the electric vehicle. And if you're charging that one up at night, you're probably looking at $5.66. Yeah, so even this, you can see the savings huge, especially if we like go back to the other presentation, and we realize that most of the trips that people take, the majority of trips people take, they could easily replace with a bike, because most of the trips we take are short trips. So let's see. So what determines the range? So range is affected by a lot of factors. So it becomes a little difficult to just be able to say what the range is. I feel like the best way to describe this to people is like if you have a pickup truck and you're towing a boat or a trailer with it, like all of a sudden your gas mileage is going to be way worse. Or if you're and that's like something that you'll really notice. And the same thing here is with a bike, you'll really notice it. So if the terrain's really hilly, you won't get the same range. The total system weight, so the weight of the rider and the weight of the bike, that's going to affect it. Then also the power output, because every e-bike will have different power, like assist levels will affect the range. And then the battery size. So most of these are kind of, we can't really affect. So the train, that's going to be whatever the train is around you. So that'll be to take into account. The power output, that'll be kind of determined on you, and the weight of everything will be kind of determined on you. The battery size is the one thing that you can purchase and that you can like really choose here. And this is just kind of give you an idea here of what battery options are out there. So Shimano and Bosch, I think it's easy to say, very fair to say, they're the two largest e-bike motor and battery manufacturers out there. So Shimano has 3 battery options. So they have a 418 watt hour, 504, and a 630 watt hour. And then Bosch has a 400, a 500, a 545, a 725, and 800 watt hour battery. So Bosch has some much larger options that Shimano does, but this is the kind of range. And I think most of them that you're going to see out there are going to be, I would be surprised if anyone's really above or below this. Part of the reason why you see these bigger ones with Bosch is that Bosch started to make specific systems for the cargo bikes that we looked at in the last presentation. So with a cargo bike, you can carry a lot more. The bike itself weighs a lot more. So there is that need for a larger battery. Bosch even has some setups where you can have like more than one battery on the bike too. So if you're really worried about range, that's something you can do. So the quick and simple math here, if you're just kind of wondering like how much time you're going to get out of something, so just you can divide the watts used by the battery watt hour to find out how long a battery will last. So example, a 500 watt hour battery, and if you're using 100 watts, will give you like 5 hours of range. So just another way to kind of figure out your range there. Or you could say with my the ride that I had there when I was putting out 150 watts to average 31K an hour. So if that was an e-bike putting out that 150 watts and I had a 600 watt hour battery, then that would give me like 4 hours at that speed. So one important thing here to realize is just the difference between the state of charge and state of health of the battery. So batteries do degrade over time. We won't really get into why and how that happens, but it does happen. Just like any EV, most EVs you'll see what I think about probably like 108-year, 160-kilometer warranty on the EV battery. That seems to be an industry standard just because they do degrade over time. So these are kind of the two sort of terms to sort of think about with any battery. So there's going to be the state of charge, so how much energy is there, and then the state of health. So the one on our right here, you can see now over time it degrading. Now it has 124 watt hours that aren't accessible, but still has 380 watt hours that are accessible. This is something we still haven't, I mean, we've been selling e-bikes for quite a while now, and I still really haven't seen a battery that's really degraded that much. They really take a lot of use, like before they start degrading. I remember one of the figures being something like you basically have to use like one of the specialized e-bike batteries for, I wanted to say it was like 30 or 40K a day for like every day for like 5 years or something before you would like actually kind of like degrade the battery. So I don't think it's something to really be worried about. There is a lot of tech in them. There's a lot of protection measures they have in them to make sure kind of they stay as healthy as possible for as long as possible, but it's totally something to be aware of. And if you're looking in like the used e-bike market, this would be something to probably want to know. I know with the brands we sell, we're able to check this on those bikes. Yeah. So how to make your e-bike last. So this is kind of a weird one. So it's simple, but it's complicated. I think the best way to understand it is I have a couple charts here. One chart is a watt graph to show you when the motor produces the most watts. And then also a Newton meter graph to show you when the motors produce the most torque. But basically it kind of comes down to just like cadence. So it's complicated to get there, but it's a simple answer. It's really just your cadence, and it's having a higher cadence more into the 70 to 100 RPM range. So you can take a look here. One of our suppliers was really kind enough to share with us some of their PowerPoint slides from some of their presentations that they do with dealers and stuff. So this is why this has kind of key competitors up here and watt comparison. But I want to start here first with the torque. So at the bottom of the graph here, we have cadence. So cadence is like how fast you're pedaling or your RPM. So that's, yeah, how fast your pedals are going around per minute. And then torque on the other side here. So these are kind of the typical torque ranges you'll see too for the different motors. So we kind of have between like 60 and 90 Newton meters of torque. But you can see the torque all drops off as the cadence gets higher. The torque is what's the harder part for on the motor and the harder part on the battery to create this torque. It's kind of requiring like more energy for it. So when you get your cadence up into these higher levels, that's where the torque drops off. So you're not having that same accelerating force, but when the torque's dropping off, that's at the same time when the watts are picking up. So the best place to be riding your bike, you can see here around 70K or 70 cadence here and up. This is kind of when the bike's producing the most watts, and it's producing them the easiest as well. So this just kind of benefits everyone. It's a really good little, so it's easiest on the motor if you have a higher cadence. Being easiest on the motor is being easiest on the battery. It's easiest on the drivetrain because you're kind of putting the least amount of power through the drivetrain. And it's easiest on you too, because you have the same thing. When you're pedaling at a lower cadence, you're using more of your muscle system. And when you're pedaling at a higher cadence, you're using more of your respiratory system. So you can just keep breathing slightly heavier all day long, but you can't keep doing like squats all day long, which is essentially what you're doing when you're going to a really low cadence. So it works out really well because what's the best for you and your body is also the best for the bike. And that's going to give you, yeah, like I said, the best battery life, best, easiest on the motor, easiest on the drivetrain, easiest on you. So this is kind of the little secret to making sure you kind of get the most out of your e-bike and out of yourself. And that's just how fast you're pedaling. For some people who aren't used to biking, getting up to an 80-90 cadence might feel a little weird, but you just practice spinning your legs more, and before you know it, it'll feel perfectly natural. And yeah, you won't have any issues at all. It's even at the point some manufacturers will have on the computer screen, they'll have like a really cool kind of like indication that'll let you know you're in the right cadence zone, just because that's where you're going to get the most out of your e-bike. Right. So just want to go through a few drivetrain choices because e-bikes are still bikes. So they still have chains. They still work like bikes. We went through the different motor setups in the first presentation. So if you feel like this is missing anything, just please refer back to that one. But yeah, we'll go over kind of the sort of three drivetrain choices here that you're probably going to see. So the first drivetrain choice, and when I talk about a drivetrain, this is really what I'm referring to: the cranks and chainring, the chain, cassette, and then the derailleur to shift the gears. So a conventional drivetrain, it's really not hasn't been designed around the torque that an e-bike is going to put into it. These are primarily designed for weight and shift performance, and the power numbers that a human is going to put through it, not that a motor is going to put through it. One of the things we tend to see with e-bikes is that we tend to see people shifting less because on a conventional bike, if you hit a hill, you would shift to deal with that hill. But on an e-bike, often, if you want, you don't have to shift and you can just rely on the bike putting in more power to get you up that hill. And because you can get away with shifting less, people often do shift less. And then since they're shifting less, they start to wear out just certain gears on their bike faster. So it's one of the things with e-bikes we really push is you still should shift. You should still ride the bike just like you would a normal bike. The e-bike, the motor lets you kind of cheat, but you should still try to do that. You'll get the most out of your drivetrain if you do that. And that big reason is just these drivetrains haven't been designed for that kind of power that goes through. And this is what you will find most e-bikes still in the market are going to have a conventional drivetrain. But now there is two good options that you can get besides kind of a conventional drivetrain like this. And one's an internal geared hub, so an internal drivetrain. So this operates in the rear hub. Sometimes these will almost like look like a motor because they're going to be quite a bit larger, but all the gears are actually inside the hub. So you'll see these as like probably like 3-speed, 9-speed, 14-speed, depends on the manufacturer and the quality of the hub. So the nice thing with the internal drivetrain is it can take the loads from an e-bike better than like sort of a regular conventional drivetrain. And the other nice thing is that the wear and maintenance on a internal drivetrain is very low because everything is like these hubs, most of these are all in like an oil bath. So wear is really low. No dirt or contaminants can really get in there. So it has a lot of pluses there. The downsides to this is generally speaking, they're going to be more costly. They're not going to be as efficient, and they're going to be heavier. So the efficiency and the weight, you're probably not going to be as worried about with an e-bike, but those are things to be aware of. The other really cool thing with an internal geared hub is that you can mate it up with a belt, and then you don't have any grease or oil to have to worry about. Just a lot less maintenance with a belt drive. And you can really only do this with an internal geared hub just because a belt can't shift up and down gears. And so, yeah, you will see even less efficiency with the belt drive. So if getting the most range out of your bike is your biggest concern, like it's not going to be the way to go. But if you want something that's basically maintenance free, nothing to worry, nothing to get rusty, then an internal hub and a belt drive is like a fantastic way to go. They can be a little harder to find, but great way to go. And then the last thing I have is Shimano's link guide. I feel a little bad because this kind of maybe seems like an advertisement, but they're also kind of the person or the company that's, I think, best filled this void, this problem that's out there with e-bikes kind of wearing out drivetrains faster. And Link Glide is really cool. It looks the same, like the cassette looks the same. It even uses the same chain as the other drivetrains, but it does use a different derailleur and a different cassette from them. But the cool technology here is that before, if you had like a high-speed camera, when a chain's shifting from gear to gear, it actually kind of jumps off of it. Like it fully comes off at one point. You, like I said, you probably need a high-speed camera to actually see that, but that's how they worked. And that's how like Shimano used to call that hyperglide. And it shifts really well, works really well. Just in these new high torque situations where wears faster and there's more torque and like pressure on the drivetrain all the time, it's just not the best solution. So Shimano designed Link Glide here, which instead of jumping off, like if you had this on a high-speed camera, you could see this chain never jumps off the gears, it actually climbs up them. So it's fascinating. I love it. It's not, you don't see very much of it right now because it is pretty new, but like huge numbers, like 300% more durable. That's amazing. We rarely get that anymore, right? Most of the time I feel like products are made to last not as long, and here's a product that's designed to last way longer and withstand way more abuse. So not only does it last longer, it also just, the shifting performance just works way better. Like you can shift while you're putting those big loads through the drivetrain. I took my e-bike in the summer. I got a new one, and first thing I did was take the conventional drivetrain off of it and put a Shimano Link Glide drivetrain on it. And I was like just blown away, like by how much nicer it was. So yeah, so if you can find these on a bike, it's great. Don't say it's a deal breaker, but if you can find Link Glide technology on an e-bike, that's definitely a plus. So Shimano makes it's either available in XT, Dior, or Qs. Yeah, I won't go into that more, but I mean, feel free to ask me about it. And it's one of those things that's kind of a quiet sort of revolutionary product. I think no one gets excited about it, but it is pretty amazing what they did here. All right, so now I wanted to put our knowledge to use a little bit. So I've got 3 different comparisons here so we can kind of see, these are all screenshots from these companies' websites. And so we can get a bit of an idea here. So starting off with the Cadillac here. So we have Specialized top end Turbo Vado 5.0 IGH. IGH stands for internal geared hub. This bike has a lot of really cool tech. It's also $7,500, so it's a lot of money, but I think the tech is well worth it. It has a rear radar, so the computer screen will actually tell you when cars are approaching you from behind you. There's a little dot on the screen that'll represent the car, and then it can beep at you if you want it to do that as well. But that's super cool. The rear light will actually change too as the car is like coming towards you to kind of give the driver more of a sense. This bike also, it has a belt drive, has the internal geared hub, but it's a fully automatic hub, so it doesn't, you don't have to change it at all. There's no shift actuation, just like an automatic vehicle. Um, it's amazing. It's like when you come to a stop sign or something, when you have to stop the bike, it automatically goes back to the easiest gear. Um, it's wild. It was kind of game changing. I don't have one. I would love to get one, but I think I have 10 bikes already. So uh, yeah, I'm probably not going to be getting this one. But it is like kind of game changing tech. So that's kind of what's available, and that's kind of why that price is that price. I mean, radar, automatic transmission, getting some amazing features there. But if we come to the parts that make it an e-bike, this is what it has on the website here. So it's just telling you the charger. Most of this isn't to be too worried about. It is telling you the voltage for the plug, so 100 to 240. So I mean, that's fine. 110 volt. That's what any household is going to be. It's telling you about just kind of the remote and stuff. But now we're getting down here. Specialized 2.2 motor. Oh, specialized 2.2 motor. So we can see it has 90 Newton meters of torque. So a really nice high torque rating, 250 watts nominal. So you see it's letting us know nominal, that's what it is. It's not telling us our max, it's just telling you the nominal. That's the more important number. And then the battery here, 710 watt hour battery. So that's a big battery in that. Yeah, so just quick, easy math, like we were saying before. So if we were running this at 250 watts, which would be a lot, but if we were running it at 250 watts for the size of that battery, you could get almost like 3 hours. Realistically, you're going to get way, way, way more than that because you're just never going to be running it the whole time at 250 watts. But I mean, if you were, that's the amount of time you get out of it. So yeah, first we had the kind of one of the nicest ones you can buy. Now the DaVinci eGriffin here, this is kind of like a mid-range one. I chose, this one's around $4,000. This one's a brand new design, so that it's pretty kind of futuristic here. Just a little side note, DaVinci is making these in Chicoutimi, Quebec, which is amazing. There's not a lot of manufacturing still in North America. But I chose this one just because this one does have Shimano cues. And so that has that link glide technology that we were talking about before. So the most expensive one had internal geared hub. This mid-range one has the cues, the drivetrain that's kind of designed around e-bikes and what they can put out. But then the e-bike system here, telling us it's a Shimano step system. So one of the more common systems out there. EP600 drive unit, 250 watts. This is nominal. The only wattage number that Shimano will publish is the nominal number, and all of their motors have the same nominal 250 watts. It's the Newton meters that change. And then 85 Newton meters. This 85 Newton meters is actually really good. This is a brand new motor, like I said, brand new bike, so it's got all the newest parts on it. It's got cues. This motor is actually quite powerful. Last year, this similar bike had more like a 50 Newton meter motor. So yeah, the power has gone up a lot. And then here it has a 540 watt hour battery. Yeah, so quite a bit smaller than the more expensive one at 700 watts. Yeah, so that's probably around like around 4,000 for that bike. And then the last one I wanted to put up, so this is Brad Power. I'm sure you've seen these out there. The other bikes I showed you were a class 1 e-bike. This I covered in the other presentation, so they don't have throttles. This one does have a throttle. Brad Power is internet only brand, so they don't have stores at all. So going through here, and this isn't common, and I don't want to pick on Rad Power at all. Nothing against their bikes. I did just want to show you because there will be kind of the industry standards that you'll see with all the bikes, like all the bikes that you'll probably find in a bike shop. But kind of once we get out of there, sometimes it can be a little bit of the Wild West. So like the battery here, this is labeled from 589 to 672 watt hour. I don't know why there's a range here. To be honest, my guess would be Batteries they're made up of cells, so not to go too much into it, but they're made up of cells. Like a 500 watt hour battery probably has like 50 or 60 cells in it. And the battery is really only as good as those cells are. So if you have like one or two bad cells, it's going to bring down the overall battery. So this is kind of why I think they might have this variance, is they haven't done the same testing on like all the cells to ensure they're all good cells. So they just know the cells are all kind of roughly between this. That's kind of my guess. And then the other thing is with with the motor here, they don't mention the Newton meters at all. So they're not giving you the torque rating. And then with the motor here too, it just says 500 watt. So it's not really letting us know if that's like max, is that peak? Like, is this 500 watts that it can do for 5 or 10 seconds before it overheats? Or is this like 500 watts that it could do all day, every day? So again, I don't want to pick on them at all. I have found this can be somewhat standard with a lot of the online brands, is that like we'll just have customers who will want to compare, and often we just can't compare because we just don't know what we're comparing. So it's just something to look at. Just it's kind of looking at that kind of next level, a little bit deeper. You'll also notice the range on this bike, where the ranges on the other bikes are generally much longer, even though they might have a smaller battery even. But yeah, it's but this bike is a lot cheaper. So I mean, it's almost half the price as the Da Vinci that we had there. Yeah. So yeah, so there. This one, I've actually done this one on time, so that's good. I don't have to rush through anything. And yeah, I've got time for some questions. So if there's any questions there.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. That was phenomenal. I myself also learned a ton there too. For questions, everyone, if you could please put any questions that you have in the Q&A tool, and we'll kind of go through those one by one. But Thomas, I got a question just to kick things off. I noticed when you're going through some of those comparable or some of the different options there at the end, one of the bikes offered an anti-theft technology. What does that look like on an e-bike? Do you know by any chance?
Oh, do you know which bike it was? Sorry, I missed
It
that.
was the very, very high end one. Is it sort of like maybe a GPS tracker like a vehicle would have in it, or
Yes, that one I believe does have that. Yeah, it does. Yeah, because
okay.
it has like an app where you can custom control like almost everything with the bike as well. And then yeah, the GPS tracking as well. Yeah.
Thanks. And our next question is, can you explain the differences and perhaps the benefits between the throttle system and the non-throttle system on an e-bike?
Um, yeah. So yeah, let's see here. Where do we begin? Um, so the big difference there is that having a throttle brings a bike from being sort of a class one bike into a class two bike. So a class one bike has all the same stipulations. So they can't go over 32 kilometers an hour. The assist can't go over 32K an hour. I mean, you can still ride the bike faster than that, but the assist can't go faster. They can't have more than 500 nominal watts. So both bikes have the same thing. Just the throttle gives it a different class rating. So it's a class two bike now. Uh, Not too much difference about that right now, but there are countries or areas that are going to consider a class two bike. It's going to get more into like a motorcycle area kind of vibe. Like it might not be allowed on bike lanes and things. So yeah, you could potentially start running into issues like that. Ontario right now, I don't think it's any issue, but it could definitely become an issue. Um, the other thing is, if you haven't tried an e-bike before, really go try one, because a lot of people I find all think that you need a throttle, but I think as soon as you try an e-bike, you'll realize you don't need a throttle. Like if you have full assist going on, like you're not even gonna like you just don't need a throttle. Like it's kind of one of those things you need to kind of ride it to understand it, but like a throttle is really not necessary. Um, One major benefit to having a throttle is once you get into like an actual like loaded down like cargo bike or something like that, they can be heavy enough that it might be like an issue to get them started right away. So that's a one situation where a throttle might make sense. Like one of our suppliers, the only bike they have that comes with a throttle is one of their cargo bikes. And then it has a throttle that you can add onto it. And that was really their argument, was just that like it's a safety measure for just like getting started at stop signs and stoplights and stuff like that. Because if you have the bike, like the bike's loaded for like 400 pounds. So if you're loaded to 400 pounds, that first half a revolution, like pedal stroke, might be kind of like too difficult. But yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that does. And just to clarify too, for someone like myself who's very new to e-bikes, the throttle system is versus a non-throttle system. The throttle is just helping you access that extra assist, whereas the non-throttle system, the assist comes through the actual pedaling itself, correct?
Yeah, and even the throttle based systems will still come through the pedals themselves. So
Okay.
both of them will work like when you're pedaling, there's sensors in there and they're measuring how much power you're putting in. And then depending what assist level you're on with the bike will depend on how much extra power it'll put in. Um, and both of them are still working like that. Just the throttle ones just give you that option of just having a throttle as well. So I guess you could just completely stop pedaling if you want. But like honestly, when you have like any assist on or just like especially a full assist, it's like you're not even pedaling. I mean, you're spinning the pedals, but you're not. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if there's any other questions, please put those in the chat. We'll maybe, I don't see any more coming in, but we'll maybe give everyone a minute or so just to put some final thoughts and questions in there. And while those questions are coming in, Thomas, is there any sort of maybe last minute pieces of advice that you have for anybody looking into this type of e-bike, or um, any other considerations that you want to share?
Oh, I
Tips and
mean,
tricks?
or tricks, or I mean, I don't know, just like there's so much fun. I think that's a big thing. It's like it puts like a silly smile across your face. Um, like from my personal experience, just like going to the grocery store, and I'll be honest, like I won't think anything of doing like 100K road ride on the weekend, but like ride 2K to the grocery store, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like I'm gonna get in my car. So it wasn't until like I got an e-bike and then I was like having no problems going to the grocery store and just like absolutely loving it. And the big benefit I can't believe with just like running all those errands by bike is like all the people I see and like all the different experiences I have and stuff. Like, I start to see all these familiar faces around town and I start to like I just yeah, it's really changed things like a lot more than just like the riding. It's pretty cool that way. It's stuff I wasn't expecting.
And we have two more questions in here now too. The first one is regarding service. Is having local service important when purchasing an e-bike?
Um, I mean, I'm biased owning a bike shop, so I would say it is. And the issue that we're running into is some of the like online bikes and things like that. Like, sometimes we just can't service them. I had it with one company where we kind of diagnosed the issue, and then they just said they would straight up just not sell us the parts. So there's some things like that. But I think this just goes with everything. It just depends like what kind of person you are with stuff. Like I know when we got our heat pumps here, like it wasn't like I didn't necessarily get what was the best rated one, but it was the one that the guy that I enjoyed dealing with and trusted what he sold. So, his warranty of knowing I have him to go to and turn to was kind of more important to me than necessarily getting the best model out there.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's totally up to you. I think I would just realize like a lot of bike shops are starting to go to almost like a car dealership model where like they'll only work on like what they sell. So I mean, we're not doing that, but I know that's becoming kind of a somewhat common thing. So it is something to consider for sure.
And another question we have is, and I think this might be a question that we covered in the last webinar, but can you explain the differences between having the motor situated within the rear hub versus having it in the pedal hub, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we had this was in the other one, but no problem. So the one that's in the rear hub, um, the benefit there is that it's cheaper and easier to make. The downfall is it's not as sensitive, and it's not as efficient. Um, And then the ones that are in the mid-drive ones that are where the pedal are, they're more complex and more expensive to make, but they're more efficient and they're more sensitive. So if you rode two bikes back to back, one that had a mid-drive and one that had a hub-based one, you're going to find the mid-drive one's going to feel much more natural, because when you start pedaling harder or back off, like you probably won't even notice that the bike is helping you. Whereas the one with like a hub motor, it's probably going to kick in and be a little bit jerky and stuff. Like you'll really notice when it goes and when it doesn't go. Um, so that's kind of a big note, a difference that you'll notice. But and then price too, because you will see probably like $2,000 wherever e-bikes kind of start is where you'll find like the hub motor. And then the mid-drive ones you're not going to see probably till about like $3,500. So it is one of those things where we often find like we'll get a customer riding on both, because I mean we sell both, and most of the time they're going for the mid-drive one just because it is a much more sort of natural bike experience, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Thomas. Really appreciate all of your knowledge and insights and sharing everything with everyone here today. I do see that we're getting close to 8 o'clock, and I want to respect everyone's time. So, if there are any future questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to myself at the Biosphere or directly as well to Thomas at Parry Sound Bikes. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer any additional questions you have. So, again, just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you at the next events and next webinar. So thanks, Thomas, as well too for being here with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great. And yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. Just contact the shop. I mean, me, Alicia, or Kevin could certainly help you out.
Perfect.
And if
Thanks,
you haven't
everybody.
rode one, like,
Oh,
yeah, test ride one. They're just a lot of fun. Sorry.
no, great. I love the last minute plug. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.